Hello and welcome to AIL TV, all the way from London. My name is Freddy Macha. I am a musician, writer, and entertainer. And today we have a very interesting topic. It's doing with cultural issues, the cultural difference, and we have very special guests. But before we kick off, I'd like to read to you a paper from Friday. It's the London Metro. Is given in the travel when you travel a free paper, and it's got a title say "Tame Your Dog's Hunting Instinct." It's a letters page 11. I was reading that and I thought, oh, this is interesting. And this is Mr. Ryan Nail, head of behavior service from Blue Cross, and he's saying, we are deeply saddened to hear about the passing of a beautiful animal like Freddy the seal. So I thought we were talking about Freddy, so it's my name, Freddy, who was fatally wounded by a dog near Hammersmith Bridge on Sunday, Hammersmith in London. Regardless of age and size, all dogs are predatory animals, and many retain strong instincts to chase and hunt prey animals. Now, there's a picture of the seal there, and it says those specifically bred for hunting will tend to have stronger instincts than other breeds. However, all dogs have the potential to carry out these behaviors unless carefully socialized and appropriately trained. So I was thinking, dogs are they're animals, the wild animals. Some of them, get trained. So I was thinking about dogs, and I was thinking about a seal. There was a picture of the seal on the paper, and I thought, we're talking about a seal, not a Freddy. And this brought it to my attention the pets thing we have, because I grew up in Tanzania, and I remember as a child we used to be scared of dogs. We used to treat cats with all kinds of different ways. I have a song called Paka Mweusi, which is talking about a black cat who died, and I went to bury it, and I was ostracized. I was told, "No, you shouldn't be doing that because black cats are a bad omen." And I remember seeing children holding tails of cats and swinging the cats, playing with them. And I remember working in certain areas of Tanzania, especially the affluent areas, and seeing dangerous dog signs at their gates. And dogs are trained to bite. I remember people feeding marijuana or cannabis to dogs so it can bite people. Dogs given pepper. I remember dogs being used on all kinds of ways. I remember being scared of dogs and being beaten by dogs. So my issue with dogs is quite a traumatic thing. So when I traveled overseas as an adult, I was in Europe in one country, and there used to be a dog coming and poo in front of our house. It did that for quite a while. So one day I waited for the dog, held a brick, and chased and threw the brick at the dog. I was in big trouble. Very big trouble. Very big trouble. Somebody rang the police came in. They took me in. They say, you were torturing the dog. I said, yeah, the dog was pooing at our doorstep. So I was told, dogs are pets. Dogs, you should have done this, you should have done that. So there's a different way from Tanzania where we just hit dogs which misbehave. So that is part of the background. I've been beaten by dogs. I got marks in my legs. So I was thinking about all these things. And I have a few friends on the program today who will discuss the issue of dogs. Each one has got a different interesting experience of dogs. We have Sharran Alexandra, who is from Maida Vale in London, is from London. We'll talk more about her sporting talents, but also she has a dog, but she has a story. Sharon is originally, her heritage is half St. Lucia and you're going to correct me, Dominica, correct? Dominica. So we're going to discuss that, the culture in the Caribbean, what it is and what is in London. And then we have Obanda E. Ouma, who is from Kenya. and he has an interesting story about dogs. He's a theater producer, and he has an interesting things to say. And last but not least, we have Sophia Egan-Cork, who grew up in Tanzania, and she lives in Ireland. So she's got both sides of the world, and she'll tell her story as well. So these are interesting people. They are quite fascinating. They fascinated me when we were having conversations, and now they're here to tell you. So, pets and animals and all kind of things. So we start with Sharon. Sharon, what's your name of your dog or your pet? What kind of pets do you have in your house?
I have a Pomeranian cross with Chihuahua. Her name is Lexi. She's jet black. She's 5 years old now. Um, and she's like one of my grandchildren.
That's it shows a lot of love there. When you say grandchildren, is affection, isn't it?
Yes, most
Yes.
definitely. I got her 2 years ago. Um, I never imagined. I'm now 56, so getting a dog at 54 years old, I've never had a pet. When I first met her when she was a puppy, I just thought, oh, it's all right, it's just a little dog. Not interested. But she always came to me. And then 3 years later, my son and his wife had a baby. And I think having the baby and having a little dog that needed to be outside a lot was too much for them. So they said to me, could I have her for a few weeks, which then turned into a few months. So I've kept her. She's mine. Um, I've now had her for 2 years, and I can't imagine my life without her. She goes everywhere with me.
Did you grow up with dogs? Did you have
No.
always as a child as a
Most I know
young?
about dogs, when I visit my grandmother in St. Lucia. From since 1970, we have been going to St. Lucia every 2 years. And my grandmother's dogs are always called Puppy. And it's only when I got older I realized they were actually different dogs. I just thought it was the same dog all the time. She only called them Puppy. They weren't allowed in the house. She fed them, scraps. Their plate was away from us. I wouldn't say there's any affection, but I don't think she would. I think she'd frown if she saw me, or maybe a little bit more than frown, if she saw me with Lexi, because yeah, I'm probably not the best pet owner because I've I've spoiled her like a child. I've allowed her to have a free reign, which is can be not the best thing. I've found out.
So Sharon, if viewers from Africa or somewhere else in the Caribbean listen to this, they would like to know how is it like in Saint Lucia compared to here, Saint Lucia compared to here with the way we treat pets. What's the
I
difference?
think back in the West Indies, dogs are still very much guard dogs. They're for outside. They're not for in the home. Even when I go and visit, I can maybe count two relatives that have dogs that come into the house, and it's only because they've lived in England and they've traveled with them. But none of my relatives would have um, a dog in that goes up and down in their home how Lexi does in my home. It's still probably very taboo that you should have a dog um,
In your bed
uh,
and with a
in your
table, it
bed, in your room, in your home.
kissing it
Yeah, she sits on the sofa,
like
which
the
is a
children.
yeah.
Yes. So thank you for this. We're gonna talk more about you in the beginning. So we have talked about Saint Lucia. and then countries to the UK, to Europe. Obanda, Oma, you grew up in Kenya, and you obviously came to UK a couple of years ago. I don't know how long you've been here, but your experiences of pets and dogs in Kenya, how is it different from Sharon? Is it the same? Do you have a pet in your house? Do you have? Would you cuddle Flexi that way?
No, first and foremost, I need to appreciate Sharon because I think she brings on board interesting experience. She's lived in the West Indies, she's lived here, and she's one of these individuals who seen how dogs are treated in both worlds, and she's moved a step further. She's got a pet already, a dog in her house. So Lexus, it is. I think you said, isn't it, Sharon? Yes.
Flexi.
So yeah, yeah, that's very special because I've not made that effort yet. I live across a very big park in Crystal Palace, London Southeast, and I see a lot of dogs there. For me, it's a little bit. It's a scenario where I really regret because I think if I had a good introduction to understand dogs, especially dogs, because I love dogs, to know how they behave, how friendly they get, I'll probably have my attitude towards dogs would be a little bit different. But just to add on to what Sharon has said, it's true that in Africa, we look at dogs as village dogs. Village dogs in Africa are not wholly independent of people, but they also don't have identification that is distinct. You cannot trace a dog to specific owners until they return to where they belong. So in Africa, dogs are meant for guarding and protecting. That's the most common function. In Africa, dogs are quintessentially for guarding and protecting. That seems to be their most common function. In the West, it's different. I've seen dogs live with humans or their owners in the houses. I've seen dogs do practically everything the owner is doing in the house. They share meals, they share beds. That's not very common in Africa. And having Sharon Alexander on the show, I think she adds a new tone because she's had experiences in both worlds, and she's moved a step further. She owns a pet, a dog. I'd like to I'd like to move closer to dogs because they're very attractive animals. I think they add a lot of value to human life. But I missed that opportunity because we always socialize to believe that a dog should be kept in a kennel and you must not always fraternize with it. So dogs are always kept, they live with you, they're domesticated, but they're separately caged somewhere. And I think that's unfortunate.
They're animals. So Africa, as we know in the Caribbean, these are not. We say like group them in countries, but obviously there's different cultures in all these areas, these regions. So Banda, just stick to that issue of animals because we were talking dogs is the most famous pet animal, but we have other things. We know that in Africa and the Caribbean and all over the world, we have police trained dogs, which are trained and they are very useful. I think in Mozambique we had people training rats to help locate where there was bombs or the bombs were put on earth by the terrorists and stuff like that. People were so of course, there's different parts of these regions. Animals are treated different. And we have a lot of animals in the Caribbean and in Africa. So many animals. So animals are everywhere. So why should we be so sensitive about dogs? And we have animals everywhere. I mean, we have game parks, and like Kenya is famous for game parks.
I like the barking. That should be encouraged. It's good for the
No.
health.
Sorry about that. Yeah, these are out my neighbor's dogs. And they're outside actually.
Sure.
And so yeah, they always bark when everybody passes because they're quite close houses. So whenever anybody passes through, they just bark.
So
um
probably know we're talking about them.
exactly.
Seven cents. So continue, Obanda. About you were talking about the training of animals and animals. The
Yeah, my experience in the West, I've lived in London for 21 years. I came over here in 2000. And my experience looking at the service that dogs provide, I think it's quite elaborate. Dogs have specific, I mean, they have specific functions. I've seen dogs that help individuals do the shopping, dogs that guide individuals to various geographical areas. I've seen dogs that are able to tell specific things that a human being cannot establish very quickly. I've seen dogs detecting bombs. I've seen dogs serving at the immigration offices. They're all manner of functions and services that dogs can provide. How I missed this in Africa to think that a dog can only protect and guard me as an individual. I think that's where now the disconnect is, because looking at how dogs work with humans here, I think it's very special. If we could just do a little bit of an analysis, look at a dog again differently, I think dogs would have better life in Africa. And this is
thank
not
you.
to say,
Mm.
this is not to say that, this is not to say that in all areas, urban and rural African areas, dogs do not have owners who pet them the way we see them done here. We're just saying that I think the realization that the function of a dog does not end with guarding and protection. This is what we need to be actually accepting. We need to be accepting that dogs can serve us better.
So there's a process that you're talking about, a process of understanding from what we used to for what we're learning. Both of you have said the same kind of process. I
It's
like,
accepting.
yeah,
It's accepting. It's accepting that this is an animal that you're
yeah,
leading into your home. Accept them, then get to know them. We tend to accept them in Africa, but we don't get to know the dogs. So that limits our understanding of how much they can do, their capability. And I feel this is the missing link.
sure. So, but it's a process of understanding. It's a growth. So we should go to Sophie, who is had a similar kind of process. Her her story when she told me was Sophie grew up in Tanzania, like myself, having a fear and being chased by dogs. You know, there was all kind of stray dogs in the street, and then you were so scared. So when you came here, you had the same kind of trauma, but then you changed, and now you have actually you love dogs.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think yeah, it's quite similar to you, Freddie, and I suppose to the rest of the speakers, Alexa and sorry, Sharon and Oma, that in Tanzania, it was just that they were mostly guard dogs. We had dogs ourselves that were just, outside. We had a guard, a Masai, who would be the only one who could feed them. So he'd make ugali for them, which is some sort of like a food, and some fish and everything for them. But we'd never see them outside their cages or the kennels. So so yeah, and I remember once, like at night, you'd be scared to come back home past maybe 6, which is when they would be kind of released. So on a few occasions I came back late, and I just remember just running for it the moment I got through the gate, and the dogs were just like chasing me. And of course, like maybe they just wanted to play, but I just had some fear of been bitten, because that's all we heard. So yeah, I managed to escape that. And also, like with my friends in school, would be coming home from school, and you just play around the road. But then there are these stray dogs that again would just start chasing you. And now that I look back again, I feel like you could, if I was confident, maybe you could kind of manipulate that, and it could be just like a form of playing. Maybe they just wanted to play, but we just ran. And I remember they used to say that you can pretend as if you're picking a stick or a stone, and just pretend as if you're throwing it to them. So then they just stop and then run back. Which is interesting because here they do the same thing. You know, you can pick a stick and you throw it at them and they go and they get it. So I feel like the dog probably at that time when I was younger was thinking the same thing. They're like, oh yeah, this is like a form of a play or a game. So obviously then they ran to go catch it. So it was just a funny kind of reflection I had there, that here is when I realized that, oh, the dog probably wanted to just play, and they just, the moment I like threw something to them, they thought I was playing catch. So yeah, and so when I came to Ireland, I lived with my auntie, and she had two dogs. She had a Kerry Blue and a Scottish Terrier, who were beautiful, like just curly hair, black. And I just was so scared of them as well. You know, I couldn't, they lived with them in the house. They were on the sofas. They kind of, petted them. And the dogs always came to me when I got into the house, and they'd just start jumping on me. So I was so scared at first. I literally could not be comfortable at all around them. But then slowly I realized that, as you said, Oma, that it's learning and getting to know them. So you see that they're actually, they just want to play with you. They're welcoming you to the house. They just want you to like, receive their joy, and kind of, petty them back. So and then I met my boyfriend who's in Mallorca, and so that's Mallorca there, and he has a lovely dog, a Labrador, and he's just like obsessed with the dog. He always says to me that it's Maggie first. Maggie is the dog, then me. So yes, so with Maggie it was the same. She would come to bed like, and I'd be like, oh no 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 no, don't get her to bed. So I was accepting of everything else but not bed. So, and again, like I got to know her, and I just got so affectionate about her, and I really miss her now. Like I'm not with her at the moment, but it really is like, it turns to be like a person that you really get to care for, because they're just so innocent, and they just want to just give you, they're always giving love to you. So it's really like a very innocent kind of being, that is very obedient to you.
Thank you. Let's we've all talked about affection, we've talked
Yeah.
about fear, we talk about these things, but there is an issue of hygiene. That's what really gets on some of, because there's a culture here. It's about culture, you know. The
Yeah.
issue of an animal being a dirty thing, that's different from a human being. And the issue that you find people sleep with them animals. We think that some of the cultures, they think that cats are cleaner, and then there's the religious issues that cats are cleaner because they don't poo in the house, where dogs poo everywhere. So how do you look at the hygiene part of it, the cleanliness? Because I've heard that a dog's tongue is actually cleaner than a human's. Is that true? If I start with Sharon, is a dog cleaner than a human?
Dog, she's a very small dog. And not having a dog before, so I literally went out and bought everything. There's dog wipes, there's things to wipe her when she comes from outside to come in, because I've got a kind of patio garden. I have a towel in the car for her. She has a towel, a separate towel in the house. She has a dog bed. She has her things. She has a bag that has everything that a dog would need. I've bought. In terms of hygiene, if she goes outside, I have wipes, I have kitchen towel, everything there. So when she comes back, I wipe her, because um, it is, again, if you think the thought process of going back and where they're walking. But if you imagine the same as you have another adult coming into your house, you don't always ask them to take off your shoes. And I know some cultures where I live, there are many, before you can enter their house, you leave your shoes outside. But we don't. And we just come in, and someone might just, oh, just sit down and not think, where have their shoes been? And then you've just walked in. This is where you're going to be walking. So I think sometimes we have double standards. But I think also because I have a small dog, she's what they call a lap dog. I wash her actually every week. She has dog shampoo, which costs like £22. I buy everything. She has dog shampoo, smellies, all sorts of things. I give her Epsom bath salts. Um, yes, I pamper her. I'm not even going to lie.
So you treat
She
her
has
like
her own. She
your
has
own
her own
child.
bed in my room,
Mm.
but yeah.
Right. No, cleanliness is one thing, Obanda, and so if you're listening to this, that you
Yeah.
can have a clean dog, but there's also the thing of dangerous dogs. You hear people being beaten or killed by dogs. Like I was reading statistics in the owner. So in the states, there's an increased increased amount of people being beaten and even killed. There's 30 to 50 deaths annually in the States of people being killed by especially pit bulls, mixed breeds, and German shepherds. So, and the UK here, we hear there's a dangerous act of 1991. So how you reconcile, like, Urban? Are you gonna have a dog? Are you gonna train? Are you gonna go to school? How are you gonna deal with that?
I think the problem is not about the dogs turning out to be dangerous. The problem is about what is it we've allowed ourselves as human beings to know about the dogs. Looking at the dogs and how they behave around human beings, looking at various video clips, documentaries of how dogs have saved human lives. I'm not one to start discrediting dogs as animals that can bite and kill. The responsibility is with us. It's incumbent upon us to ask us to figure out what value is it that dogs can bring in our lives. How is it that if somebody has cancer and it's cancer of the throat, a dog will spend like a whole 1.5 months just around the throat, every time licking the throat and figuring out, you're not quite sure what's happening. And then 2 months later, you go to the hospital, say you have throat cancer. How does that happen? This is a very intelligent animal. I think the intelligence of a dog has gone beyond what a human being can even imagine. So for me, it's not so much about worrying of how dogs can scare, bite, kill human beings. For me, it's just about restructuring our relationship, our operations with dogs to get them to understand, to get to understand how do these animals function, what purpose do they serve in human life, because we don't, for example, foxes are not domesticated, but the dogs are. So why is it that foxes are in the bush or in the wild and we have dogs with us? There must be a reason. So we need to pull up our socks, understanding what the functions of these animals, understanding as Sophia has said very clearly, she had accepted the dog in all spheres except the bed. She thought the bed, now you can't be here. But then now her opinion is very different. So I feel like, in fact, Sophia and Sharon, they're quite ahead of time because I have not joined the bandwagon. I don't have an animal here yet. I don't have a dog here yet. And I wish I could do that very quickly. So I feel as though we are the ones to seek to understand the dog. Dog, they already Dogs already understand who we are. They know, they've already figured out the kind of relationships they want to have with us. This is why when if you go to an abandoned car and you find that there's a dog that has been mistreated, pelted with stones, thoroughly malnutrition, and needs some food, water, this dog in a way will not be very willing to engage you or even move close to you. But somebody who speaks the language of a dog gradually will move closer with little tricks, with little tips, little encouragements, enforcement, and you'll find that these dogs now start swarming closer to them. There's a language these people are speaking that we need actually to, in a way, adopt.
It's true.
I don't know.
So, Obanda, we are talking about dogs as the main star, but we have other animals that. So we have game parks in the world. We have sanctuaries for lions. We understood that there's different types of cats. There's the usefulness of guinea pigs used for experiments. There's the usefulness of birds, the songs. People being inspired by bird songs. There's a thing with the owl being a wise bird in different cultures, whereas a symbol of death in some parts of the world, say in Africa, an owl is a symbol of death, whereas in Europe is a symbol of wisdom. So there's different. There's a whole thing about animals and the way we live with them. They're part of this of the human, part of the earth. So how, Sophie, how do you see animals in general? Do you just a dog you like? Do you eat meat? Are you a vegan? Are you anti-meat? Do you eat meat? Would you eat a deer? Would you eat chicken?
Yes, yes. I think as an African or like predominantly African person, it's impossible to be vegetarian or not have your meat. But I think I have respect for animals, so I eat animals and I appreciate that they are here so that we can eat them. You know, they can nourish us, and maybe when we die, they get the vegetation that grows from that. So the circle of life, that's what I believe in, and the interconnectedness of the kind of the ecosystem and the biology. So yeah, for me, I respect animals, and I will admit that in Tanzania I would have hit dogs, maybe even cats. Um, and I think it was again coming from the just ignorance of, just respecting all living things, and having that respect, and you can receive that back. So I think at the moment I have grown to, really respect dogs and or like, animals in general. And as you said, Oma, that, they're quite intelligent. Each animal has their own kind of different contribution in our different aspects in life. So yeah, I think for me, I would call it respect, really.
Yeah, it's a wide topic, and we have animal campaigners. We have all different types of different levels of relationship with
Yeah.
animals. But let's go to the basics of why. Part of the reason why we're here is also you're very skilled, multi-skilled individual, three of you. So we start with Sharon. You are a renowned athlete. You're considered you're the heaviest woman in the world. You've been wrestling, you've been sumo, you've been competing, and you're awesome. You've been on Channel 4. You've been. Tell us a little bit about your story, your journey. Did you just become a wrestler out of accident? Were you bullied? Did something happen? Were you chasing dogs?
I actually started sumo wrestling when I was 40 years old. So quite late in life. I'm kind of a couch potato. I've always been. And it was just at a low time of my life that I was introduced to some producers, and they said to me, "Oh, would you like to do something on TV? You've got a really great personality." And it then just came about that someone said, "Oh, how about sumo wrestling?" And I thought, I'm not that big. But then 14 years down the line, I've sumo wrestling has given me so much positivity in my life. I've always been a big woman. I've been a heavy woman, but I've always the sumo's taught me to be more confident, more assertive. I I am who I am. If someone, the biggest thing someone can say to me is you're big and black, and I say, so what?
Did you
If that is
train?
the most you can find out about me,
Did you train for this, or you just went for it? You just went in competition?
there's initially we auditioned for the parts. There were like it went down to 50 women going to Derby, and we just kind of competed against each other. Then over the weeks, it came down to the final six. after 3 months of training. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the final six to go to Japan in 2007, which is, it's been a fantastic journey for me. My
Wow.
life really did start at 40.
Did you can you train people this? Like, are you a instructor? Can you?
It's a very expensive hobby, to be honest. It is a very expensive hobby. This country, the UK, doesn't give funding for anything. If you say if it's to do with fat, that's what they're seeing. They don't see there's so much more that we could do with a little bit of help. And over the years, I've tried many different avenues to try to get something so I could introduce other women to doing this, other men, but it just hasn't really happened. Um,
Wow. So
Maybe
it's an
someone
unusual.
else has that,
Mm.
that gift to be able to get people to come in and do it. But for me, it is a fantastic sport, and you can do it until whenever. There's no age.
It's not like boxing or sports soccer where people retire 30, 35. Yeah.
No,
Wow.
no.
Interesting. But you're very dramatic. And talking of drama, we need to speak to Obanda. He's a theater producer. Obanda, you work as a theater producer for how long have you been doing this? You write plays or what do you do? Can you
Since
tell me?
94.
94.
Since 94, but it's a mixture of many things. Even though my favorite, my best productions are around. I mean, there would be productions that would influence other practitioners in various sectors, influence community members who are maybe affected or afflicted by the issues in reference. It could be around HIV, it could be about female genital mutilation, it could be about human rights, it could be about voting rights, it could be about many things. And England introduces uh, a new space. Post COVID, we're now seeing a situation where, as a producer, you got to think about producing your work virtually. So physical spaces are not going to be they're not fashionable anymore because we can't go there due to restrictions. So I'm more worried about how I'll make my productions more accessible to people's screens as opposed to inviting them to physical spaces where they pay for their gates, they pay for their tickets to come and watch a performance.
Is there a strong idea you want or you want to like as a musician I want to make people happy. I want to inspire people with my music. What exactly do you want to do with the theater? How do you see it as a vehicle of progress?
That's a very important question. Probably the first one to be asked on a platform like this. I'd like to communicate, but my communication would be best restricted to conversations around race, to conversations around tribe. In the West, I mean, we would look at that as race inequalities, racial inequalities. In third world, they call them, developing world, it would be tribe. I mean, I come from a country, I come from Kenya. Kenya has more than 46 tribes. We speak more than 46 different languages there. So, divided along tribal lines, you find a community that is very fragmented in many ways. So, if my theater and the productions we have shines a light on the issue of racial inequalities, on the issue of tribal inequalities. I just don't like the social stratification order of a human being. I don't, even if, I mean, it's so bad that even if you go to a public cemetery in London, you'll be told, oh, this is for the nonconformists, this is for the dissenters, or this is for the, there's just class everywhere. If my theater could help members of the community discuss on a level ground, discuss with common interest, discuss with forged partnership, I'll be quite happy. That's my goal.
Oh, that's interesting. Interesting. So you have a process there. You have a process of the animals. You're a man of, you're a thinker. So thinking and researching. So we come to you, Sophia Egan-Cork. You have talents in languages. You're doing this researching. You also dance. I suppose yesterday you danced on an event with the women. So which is
Yeah.
which? Which is your favorite, or do you do all of them at the same time?
Yeah, so that's quite hard because, you know, as I grew up, I was just, I suppose, channeled to just think that, you should only aim for one métier and that should be your thing. However, I was always conflicted because I suppose I was a good student in that I wanted to do well. So therefore, I was good at the sciences, and therefore, I was pushed towards that. However, my interests as well were within, again, communication, art. I was in the drama kind of societies in school. I was in the choir. I was dancing. I made people laugh. So I suppose those were kind of, now realizing that, they were my passions, or my, like, yeah, things that I really enjoyed doing, and sort of my calling. And I think I kind of managed to weave that into my profession now, where I'm a public health researcher. So I'm also very curious, and particularly I grew up, I suppose, my both my parents are health workers. So I grew up a lot surrounded by, hospital environments, campaigns on, like, HIV/AIDS. I was born in 1994. So by that time, as I grew up, there was a lot of campaigns on that, and kind of spreading awareness. So I really got interested in how you could communicate health messages to the public, to spread that awareness and therefore protect the health of a population. So I'm really keen, I suppose, in everything that I do to, spread joy through my dance. I do that, kind of uplift as well, inspire people, and also, promote a healthy lifestyle, um, in whatever sense that makes them happy.
I'm gonna throw a much more philosophical question to the three of you. Uh, we've been talking about pets as an example. We talked more about the dog, but there's this COVID-19, and when it started out, people pointed fingers. They said bats. When HIV came, people pointed fingers at chimpanzees. When it was cholera in the 70s, I remember we were so worried about flies. So these neighbors, these colleagues, these people who were sharing the earth, they're always on a rampage. So they kind of cause. We had thing with birds as well in the early noughties, with the SARS thing that they come from ducks or from chicken. So we're always with these animals. So well, the thing is, the three of you are professionals in your thing. Where do you see the world going with the animals? We're supposed to, because there's something somebody's saying that we've been treating animals very bad, and it's big time. There's people who eat dogs. There's people who eat all kinds of. They marry animals. There's all kind of things with animals. Yeah, there's stories of people marrying. There's a guy who married a dog in Australia, and he said that it's not a sexual relationship; it's just love. And then you have extremities of people eating dog meat, not because it's cheaper, as say there's a country in Africa where they say it's cheaper to have dog meat than beef. I know it's quite hard to say that, but it's found that dogs are everywhere, so it's quite cheap. So how do you see the relationship between humans and animals in general, and where are we going? We're going to have more epidemics. I mean, we had HIV, we had SARS, we had everything happening. What is happening to us humans with animals? Starting with you, maybe we should start with Sophie again. Uh,
Yeah.
you ready
Okay.
to go with that
um,
as a
yeah, that's
researcher?
it's very interesting question there, Freddie. So to start with, I think there's an issue, as I said, respect. for living things, as you can hear them barking there. So that is the utmost thing, respect. And if you see, even from, again, so the public health perspective, that all these kind of epidemics and pandemics previously have been linked to animals. And that's no coincidence, I think. And it has been shown as well that we have kind of ventured as human beings to like areas that belonged or are sacred to animals. And therefore we have kind of crossed that barrier and then bring in the viruses, because viruses and all these microorganisms have, they multiply and they have a different sort of, again, way of feeding. So they mutate as well depending on the environment in which they get into. So when we venture into these new areas, into the forest through deforestation, urbanization, globalization, we then break that respect with nature. That's my thinking. And therefore we bring in, we allow for the viruses or these microorganisms that were in these areas to come out. And from that, the animal is just the vector then. So we've kind of mingled. And therefore that brings that, introduces the viruses who then mutate, and because they have to adapt, they have to live, and that goes on. So I think until we as humans really learn to kind of, respect and treat animals and their natural living kind of areas, and respect that, we will continue to have these epidemics and these, pandemics and viral mutations. I think it's only going to get worse if we don't back down. So yes, very, very dire situation, and I'm being very negative, but yeah, that's what I think anyway.
It's a moral issue, it's a spiritual issue, it's a political, it's a philosophy. We have with people who are very extreme in all of what
Very,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, people don't want to even eat meat. I mean, there's all kind of different things. So, I'm gonna go to Obanda. I'm gonna finish with Sharran in a minute. But Obanda, is your thinker as a theater producer? Do you think there's a way that we could highlight this in your work? Are you thinking what was we gonna do? We're gonna rely on politicians? Are we gonna what do you think will be the way to improve our relationship with animals, with nature, not just animals, nature?
Here is
Obanda.
if we haven't looked at the impact of our own activities on Earth. I mean, I just take you back a little bit. About 8 months ago, we had statistics that were showing that since the lockdown in 2020, the world had breathed fresh air. Birds were now flying freely. Trees could grow again, and because the human activity was limited to their own households. So the question here is, first and foremost, what roles do animals play? That's wild, domesticated animals like dogs. Of course, I'm a champion of dogs now. What roles do they play? Are we ready to embrace that? Are we ready to incorporate the roles these animals play into our daily activity? And maybe in a bid to minimize our carbon footprint. I just feel that if we continue the way we have, I come from Africa, and my country in Kenya is located along a very long coast of the Indian Ocean. And if you look at the amount of rubbish that people leave in that ocean, that traps the turtles, the fish, and all manner of animals are wild and domesticated, it's unbelievable. I think it's time to forge new relations. And if there's any way my work of art can present an appeal to the human beings today, it should be centered around appealing to the human beings to revisit or reimagine their relationships with wild and domesticated animals.
Thank you. Sharon, where do we find the balance? Because that's the point about some people go on extremes. Where do you find the balance with this thing, with relationship with nature and relationship? You are a sports an athlete. You know about
I
wrestling.
to be honest, I don't really there's nothing except mutual respect, because I hear what you're saying, like about people eating animals and eating dogs and things, cats. But if you have to tread very carefully. You guys, like from Africa, I'm from England, let's say, and even of West Indian parentage. I used to grow up and hear that people from St. Lucia eat cats. They soak them in rum and they taste lovely. I hear people in Africa, then they say someone they eat they call them wild rats or something. You have to be very
Bushmeat.
careful in what you say, because what is someone's distaste is what someone else likes. So I'm the type of person I would say to each his own. If I have a choice, I will not eat dogs. I've been to Hong Kong, I've been to China, I've been to the dog market. I've seen it, smelled it. It was my choice not to taste it. But I was also with people who said, well, we're only on God's earth once. Let's try it. So I didn't say anything. I just stepped back. And it's the same thing I'm saying. My dream is one day to go to places like Nigeria and Ghana. And I've heard people say they eat many different things. And I'm gonna have to be open-minded. Because if you think about in England, everything I love goat. We eat curry goats as West Indians. If you say to an English person goat, they go, ooh, what's that? They cannot link a goat with a lamb, with sheep. They're not realizing they're kind of the same meat.
Exactly.
They just think, ugh, don't eat a goat. But they eat rabbit. So you have to say to each his own. So
Exactly.
anywhere that I'm going to go, I'm going to try to give those people or that place the respect they deserve. If I don't want it or they tell me what it is, I'm not going to make that face. I would just say, no, thank you. I would rather not. But it is very, very difficult, I think, to find a happy medium when it comes to animals, because all over the world, we all eat differently. There are so many things that we eat that we don't eat that others do. So you have to be open minded in terms of
Exactly.
food.
Exactly. So it's a very long discussion. We can talk about horses, we can talk about donkeys, the way that mistreated in some countries. We can talk about so many things, endless, but we cannot cover everything. We just poking. So we hope our viewers are gonna give some views. And it's been very exciting. I hope you enjoyed. But I'd like to, before we finish, each of you could give a one liner. Like I could say you just say that each according to his own or her own or his own, and if you could give one line just to say goodbye to the viewers, what would you say? I'll say mine at the end, but or should I start?
You
um,
start.
as if I say, um, I love life, and everything in it is fine with me. That's my long line. What's yours? Who should go first?
I'll
So
go
if you wanna go,
next.
yes, give us a
um,
one liner.
okay, one line. Yes, I think uh, again, life is about being connected with each living organism, and we just have to be mindful of each other as a whole universe.
Mindful of each other.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'll take that. I'll take that. That was one from Sophie. Obanda, you ready? Or or you're thinking?
Just thinking.
having met having met these wonderful people who've embraced animals and particularly dogs, I think for me it's a new beginning, a very new beginning. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Sharon. For me, it's a
Thank
new
you.
beginning.
Thank you.
Sharon,
Looking forward to
should we?
seeing documentaries on animals' rights, and um,
Mm-hmm. There's a song that's
and
gonna
yes,
come.
yeah,
I got a song
yeah.
about like a black cat and stuff. So yeah, we can talk the whole
I
day.
would
Yes, thank you for
Don't
coming. And
take life for granted.
mm-hmm.
Yes, yes.
I I was in hospital with COVID-19 for 3 weeks. I'm sitting here today, so I'm feeling blessed. So my thing would be is stay blessed and stay positive.
Thank you. Stay blessed and stay positive.
And you
We'll
could
take that.
see it shining through your face as
Sharon,
well, Sharon.
Oh, thank
and a
you.
new
And nice
beginning
to
for
meet
more.
you guys.
Nice
Nice to meet
beginning.
you.
Thank you very much.